What's up, guys? Got some UFC news for you today. If you see him on the screen, he's been the man of the hour for all the wrong reasons. Some news on the UFC Saudi card this weekend, some new announced UFC matchups, an update on the Jon Jones-Tom Aspinall fight, Conor McGregor crashing out, and Bryce Mitchell making headlines. That's the video today, guys. If you enjoy these kinds of news videos, drop a like on the video for me. I would greatly appreciate it. Let's get right into it, starting off with the UFC Saudi weigh-in results. I always like to look at these because I'm always curious if fighters make weight. Izzy and Mavov are right on the money at 185. Shara and Michael Page also on the money. I don't think anybody missed weight for this card. It's only an 11-fight card. Sergey Pavlovich weighing in at 249 versus Rosenstruck 252. Man, Sergey Pavlovich is so just a brute. Dude's got the giant head. Saeed Vinicius Oliveira, no problem at 135. Mike Davis, Fares Siam, good. Yeah, it looks like everybody made weight. Even the GOAT, Shamil, the Mill Deal Beef Chief, Gaziev made weight. And he's under the weight limit by 5 pounds. So you already know Shamil, the Mill Deal, been spending some time on that treadmill, brother. So respect to him. Terrence McChinney, 156. Yeah. The Battle of the Blobs, Hamdi Abdulwahab versus Jamal Puagas. I'm glad everybody made weight. Looks like the fights tomorrow are a go. I will be watching the official weigh-ins later. But if you guys don't know, I am picking Izzy to beat Nasruddin Imavov by a 49-46 decision, 4 rounds to 1. It's a close fight. I'm picking Shara Magomedov to beat Michael Venom Page by a decision, and Sergey Pavlovich to KO Rosenstruck in the first round. But we shall see what happens. I'm excited. I'm glad all fighters made weight. Just wanted to update you guys on that. Let's get on to the next thing. We got some announced UFC fights. We got Shamil Gaziev transformation, and all I got to say is Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones better watch out. They should be shaking in their boots because the GOAT, Shamil Gaziev, is having the transformation of a lifetime. I mean, this guy easily just shed off like 10 pounds, and he's looking shredded. I mean, we're looking at Arman Sarukian levels of physique. Shamil Gaziev is coming for that belt. He's improved this. He's training with Merab these days, so he's going to have the improved cardio like Merab. I mean, Shamil Gaziev downgraded from Big Macs to hot and spicy McChicken, so this guy's on a better diet. He's looking to claim the belt. First round KO over Thomas Peterson. Shamil's the GOAT, man. I'm telling you, this guy, we need to get this guy in the top 5 immediately. I think he smokes everybody in the top 5. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to his fight tomorrow. Shamil, the Mill Deal Gaziev. No longer the Beef Chief. He's now the Chicken Chief. And, yeah, shout out to my boy Shamil for quite the insane transformation. Let's get on to an announced fight that the UFC broke through recently, which is Kevin Holland moving back down to welterweight versus Gunnar Nelson. Now, if you guys don't know, Kevin Holland is 1-4 in his last 5. So if he cares about his career at all, which I know he barely doesn't, but if he cares at all, he was going to go back down to welterweight. And I think this is a good matchup for him. Gunnar Nelson, old man Gunnar. I think he's like 37, 38, hasn't fought in 2 years. And this is a very winnable fight for Kevin Holland. If you guys noticed throughout Kevin Holland's career, he typically gets, the way he lost his fights at welterweight is he got outstruck, but for the most part, outside of the Hamza fight, he's been outstruck. But when he fights up at middleweight, his problem lies in the grappling. He's undersized, so the guys like Rainer de Ritter, who got a 20-pound weight advantage, just takes him down and bullies him in the grappling. But a guy like Gunnar Nelson, who doesn't have really good striking and is not the best wrestler, although great on the ground, I think Kevin Holland can keep this fight standing on the feet and piece up Gunnar Nelson at range. I think this is an easy win for Kevin Holland. Genuinely, bro, if Kevin Holland loses to Gunnar Nelson in 2025, I think he should hang it up and find a new hobby because I respect this guy for fighting often, but to lose to Gunnar Nelson would be absolutely embarrassing. I mean, no offense to Gunnar Nelson, but he's way past his prime. He's not a good striker. He's not a good wrestler. So this is Kevin Holland's fight to win. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but yeah, a good matchup for UFC London. Kevin Holland getting right back in there. He done tarnish his entire legacy and just image on the Rampage Jackson podcast. So I guess he's trying to get that sour taste out of his mouth and let the fans know, hey, man, you guys should focus on my fights and not a 45-70. But yeah, Kevin Holland should run away with the 45-70 meme. He should make merch that says 45-70. He should change his name to Kevin the 45-70 Holland instead of the Trailblazer. He should run full with the meme, but he's probably not going to. But either way, this is a great matchup on UFC London. Add another fight that's going to be worthy of watching on that card. Looking forward to it. JDM versus Leon headlines, I think, in March 22nd on the screen. So, yeah, looking forward to it, man. Let's get on to the next announced matchup. I believe this is on UFC 313. And I can't lie, guys, the UFC 313 card is looking a little weak outside of the main co-main. They added this fight, Bobby Green versus Mauricio Ruffy, or Ruffy, whatever. But if you look at 313, man, there's Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev. There's Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, Bobby Green, Mauricio Ruffy. And outside of that, man, it's looking kind of weak. I know they could add a couple more fights, and they absolutely need to, because you can't go from UFC 312, an absolute abomination of a card, and come back into UFC 313 with another abomination of a card. I know it has a better co-main and main event, but come on, man. We need more. The UFC is dropping the ball in 2025, in my opinion, man. If they're expecting us fans to drop $90 on a UFC pay-per-view, or $80, whatever it is, they've got to step it up, man. Like, I'm sorry. If you're going to fill the card with unranked fighters and WMMA fighters and expect me to drop $90, it ain't happening, man. And they wonder why a lot of the pay-per-view sales are probably lower than they ever had been. I think that the UFC has gotten way too comfortable with the ESPN deal, because if you guys don't know, I think the ESPN deal, every single pay-per-view card they have, it's equivalent to like automatic 500,000 pay-per-view buys. They get paid out by ESPN. But the ESPN deal is actually up in June. I don't know if they're going to re-sign with ESPN or go with another like network. I'm hoping they go with another network. And the reason I'm hoping that is because I feel like if the UFC went with another network, they would have to prove their worth almost to the new network. And that would force them to put on banger fights. They're like, oh, we're going to prove we're the top promotion, you know? If that makes sense. Because I feel like they've gotten super comfortable with ESPN putting on these very subpar pay-per-views like UFC 302, UFC 307, UFC 309 for MSG card wasn't that great. UFC 310, UFC 312, now 313 is decent, but it's like, man, they could do so much better. The UFC pay-per-views back in the day felt like they were so much better. Where's the pay-per-views with 3 title fights? You know, we haven't seen that in ages. And it's like, I don't know, man. The last UFC pay-per-view with 3 title fights was 300, and the third title fight was a BMF title fight. So technically, not even a real title fight. But I'm yapping up a storm over here. I'm speaking Japanese. Let's get into this matchup. Bobby Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. This is a good matchup for Mauricio Ruffy. In his prime, I'd probably pick Bobby Green, but let's be real, guys. Bobby Green is coming off a brutal KO loss to Jalen Turner last year, and then he bounced back versus Jim Miller, and then he got absolutely slept by Paddy Pimblett, and his arm got snapped in that fight. And he's 38 years old now, and Mauricio Ruffy's in his prime, man. 11-1. I know he didn't look the best in his last fight against James Lontop, but you have to take into consideration that James Lontop missed weight and had like a 20-pound weight advantage over Ruffy, so he was noticeably bigger. I think whenever both guys make weight, Mauricio Ruffy is going to show up and show out against Bobby Green. A lot of people are picking Bobby Green because, you know, he's a crafty vet, but man, I don't know, man. I don't think we're looking at the same Bobby Green. Bobby Green's an old head. I mean, like I said, if you want to know if CTE exists, just look at Bobby Green. This guy changed his name to King when he was 37 years old. Bro, ain't nobody calling you King. You're Bobby. And yeah, I think that Mauricio Ruffy is going to be smoking that Bobby Green pack come UFC 313. But yeah, I thought this was a fun matchup. I really, really hope that the UFC introduces more fights to UFC 313, man. UFC 314 is rumored to be Topuria versus Volk 2, and co-main event is Pantoja, Cara France. So that's looking good. 2 solid title fights. I just need the UFC to step it up with these pay-per-views, man. And a lot of fans will defend the UFC and be like, dude, you can't expect the UFC to put banger fights on every single card, man. That's just brain dead. It's like, I to a certain degree, I agree with that, but it's like, there's no excuse of UFC 312. If you guys don't know, UFC 312, outside of the main and co-main event, there's not a single ranked fighter. That is absolutely unacceptable. We need the entire main card of every single pay-per-view to be filled with ranked fighters. You know what builds hype for fights? Whenever there's risk, whenever there's like something for the fans to get excited about. If there's 2 unranked fighters fight on the UFC card, who cares what happens, man? There's no implications. I need rankings on the line. But yeah, I'm yapping again. Complaining about the UFC cards. I just feel like the UFC has conditioned the fans to get complacent with how bad these cards have been recently, and I'm tired of it, man. I'm tired of it. I'm a diehard fan of this sport my entire life. I feel like as fans we deserve better, and these cards recently just haven't been it. But yeah, let's get on to the next bit of news, which is Dana White, an update on the Jon Jones situation, and it's kind of a disappointing one. Dana White admits UFC can move on from Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. Now, this, I'm not surprised. I knew Jon Jones was blowing smoke up everybody's ass after the UFC 308 fight, whenever he was like, if the UFC negotiations go well, we might get the fans what they want to see. I knew Jon Jones was never going to fight Tom Aspinall. He knows the risk. And it really irritates me how many John Jones D-riders come out defending him. Like, dude, John Jones doesn't need Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall needs John Jones. Who is Tom Aspinall beat? Well, Tom Aspinall doesn't care about John Jones. He doesn't even want to fight him, like dying to fight him. He just wants to be the undisputed heavyweight champion, and John Jones is holding that up. And the thing that irks me about John Jones is he literally made a career off of beating overblown middleweights and fighting guys that he had a height advantage and size advantage over, and his average age of opponent is like 38. John Jones was the guy coming up that always had like an 8-year age advantage. Like he was 8 years younger than DC. He was like 8 years younger than Glover whenever they fought. It's like this guy's known for fighting fighters that are way older than him. And now that he's the older fighter at 37 and Tom Aspinall's 32, he's like, oh no, dude, Tom Aspinall's 5 years younger than me and he has like a 20-pound weight advantage. Of course, the fans want to see me fight him because they want me to lose. It's like, yeah, dude. If you're going to sit around and hold up the heavyweight division, you need to defend your belt against, I don't know, your interim champion maybe. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. John Jones doesn't have to fight Tom Aspinall. Vacate the belt and move on with your life, dude. Stop holding up the division. We know Tom Aspinall is the uncrowned champ. There's a reason that John Jones is requesting $30 million to fight him because he knows how dangerous Tom Aspinall is. I've gone on record to say that Tom Aspinall would smoke John Jones in 2 minutes. And while I do believe that, do I think there's a world where John Jones could beat Tom Aspinall? I do. I do see a world. I'm not delusional enough to say there's no chance that John Jones couldn't take down Tom Aspinall and wear him out and beat him in the later rounds by a TKO or even a submission. I'm not that delusional to say that can't happen. But when we're talking about danger, Tom Aspinall is the most dangerous heavyweight we've ever seen in the UFC. From finishing on the feet, on the ground. Yeah, there's Francis, but Tom Aspinall is dangerous everywhere the fight goes. He has the shortest average fight time in UFC history, with each of his fights lasting an average of 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I mean, there's a reason that John Jones doesn't want to fight this guy. And I'm sorry, man. I just don't have any respect for John Jones. Whenever his UFC career is all said and done, he's not going to be known as the guy who dominated for years on end. To me, he's not going to be known as the GOAT. He's going to be known as the guy who did steroids, beat on women, and ducked competition whenever times got tough. Took 3 years off out of his career, waited for Francis Ngannou to go to the PFL. Then he all of a sudden wants to move up to heavyweight against the worst grappler. And yeah, man, I don't know. But I'm not surprised Dana admits that the UFC could move on from the John Jones and Tom Aspinall thing, given that John Jones just is probably pricing himself out, saying he wants 30, 40, 50 million for the Tom Aspinall fight. And maybe if he didn't do steroids his entire career, I would agree he deserves it. But he doesn't deserve anything. Honestly, I don't care if I ever see John Jones fight Tom Aspinall at this point. I just want him to vacate the belt. Let Tom Aspinall fight Gelton Almeida or Volkov for the belt because Cyril Gane doesn't deserve a title shot. Move on from this John Jones nonsense. And yeah, let's get the heavyweight division rolling. No one cares about John Jones anymore. Truly. I know I don't. Let's get on to, and yes, if you guys are wondering, I dislike John Jones. I don't hate him because I don't hate anybody, but I very much so dislike John Jones. Let's get on to the next thing, which is absolutely insane. Conor McGregor absolutely crashed out today, as he does multiple times a week. Whenever you're on the booger sugar, that typically is what happens. He sent this tweet at, I believe, Habib, which is absolutely insane. Let me read this out. 15 minutes, I done Aldo, 15 seconds. Show your wife, N-bomb. Show your kids, N-bomb. Cousin effing, mother effer, hide mother effer. Show us you and your cousin's kids live together, because we have kids here in Ireland that want to smoke them in competition. Are they competing, or what are you saying? Ireland versus Dagestan? Where's your offspring? We can't wait to see them. The best of Dagestan offspring? Dagestan? What do we think? Is this true? Who's next? Because Fat So with the coach whistle won't fight. Who the F designated this Fat B as master father? Certainly not his father Abdulmanap. And they all know it's in Dagestan. Dagestan think you are P-lips for retiring. Real Dagestan is forever. You are laughed at behind your back in Dagestan. Lazy you are, they say. Fight me and make $100 million and give it to the entire village of Dagestan. Lazy you won't. Why? Fat, lazy, scared be, lazy, fat. So, okay. So, Conor McGregor dropping N-bombs left and right. Absolutely crashed out. And in typical McGregor fashion, he went ahead and deleted the tweet. And, man, Conor McGregor with the whole BKFC, obviously snorting it up every single day. This guy, every time you see this guy in a press conference, his head's enlarged. His face is red as can be, and crashed out against Paul Hughes after Paul Hughes showed respect to Usman and Dagestan, and now he's crashing out at Habib. And man, this guy has an unlimited supply of the booger sugar from what seems to be the Irish mafia or whatever it is. This guy seems to have an unlimited supply of drugs, and it's absolutely insane how day after day he just digs his hole. I mean, Conor McGregor these days is making John Jones look like a stand-up civilian, you know? It's crazy the downfall this guy's had, and I don't know, man. He does promote BKFC very well, but in terms of public image, McGregor just seems to take his shovel and bury himself a little bit deeper. And like I said, he did delete this tweet because that's what Conor McGregor's famous for. He always posts some very over-the-top stuff on Twitter, and then it blows up, and then he takes it down. And yeah, this guy destroys his public image more and more every single day. And like I keep saying, guys, I don't think we ever see Conor McGregor back in the octagon. There's just no way. With the way he acts and the way he is, like, there's no way this guy's training. Like, when's the last time Conor McGregor did a training session? He's always drinking alcohol. He's always on the booger sugar. He's always seems to be, like, wired out of his mind at press conferences. Go watch the BKFC press conference, Eddie Alvarez versus Jeremy Stephens. Conor McGregor was losing his mind at that press conference. I mean, I thought his head was going to pop whenever he was screaming up on stage, but yeah, what do you guys think of Conor McGregor posting this? By the way, this guy has one win in 8 years. Conor McGregor has one win since 2016. That's absolutely insane. I don't know what else to say, man. This guy, hear me out, guys. I don't think Conor McGregor ever fights again. He's not fighting Michael Chandler. He's not fighting Jeremy Stephens. This guy is probably just going to continuously crash out on Twitter. And yeah, the UFC is holding him hostage. I don't think they're going to let him fight in BKFC, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this. Conor McGregor crashing out in the comments. Let's get on to the story of the day. The thing that happened yesterday, actually, and this is the biggest news across the UFC. No one saw this coming. So Bryce Mitchell, right, started a podcast, and in his podcast, he absolutely decided to go absolutely haywire and make some of the most boisterous, outrageous claims you could make. UFC Bryce Mitchell calls the German guy with the mustache a good guy and denies the Holocaust. Absolutely insanity by Bryce Mitchell. Of course, the Bryce Mitchell D-Riders are going to be like, yeah, dude, Bryce Mitchell's base, speaking facts, man. And it's like, come on, dude. Come on. Bryce Mitchell's the same guy that said the earth is flat, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Mitchell thinks that, like, birds, like, are government spies. I don't know. But basically, he had his very first podcast episode, and they were talking about Elon Musk doing the salute that he did, and it came up about the Holocaust, and Bryce Mitchell just started going off about the German guy with the mustache, saying that he's not a bad guy and that he would love to go fishing with him, and pretty much denying that the Holocaust ever happened. And obviously his co-host was like bewildered, like, oh, what did I get myself into? His face looked of shock and like, is this dude really saying this right now? And Bryce Mitchell just kept going on and on, drilled the point home, and obviously this was insanity. Like, UFC fighters obviously have free speech, but I would not be surprised if the UFC made an example out of Bryce Mitchell, given like how insane his claims are. Like, I don't think anyone's went this far in terms of like political views in general. And yeah, let's get into what Dana White said, and I'll kind of get into what I think of the whole situation and where do I think the UFC is going to go from here. But basically, Dana White, immediately after it dropped, had a press conference at Power Slap, and he basically had a statement ready. And I think it's no surprise that Dana White dropped a statement on this right away, because if you guys don't know, Ari Emanuel, the owner of the UFC, is Jewish. The owner of the UFC is Jewish. So Bryce Mitchell is under fire right now. And Dana White had a statement ready at the Power Slap press conference because he knew they were going to ask. And he pretty much ripped Bryce Mitchell a new one, saying that Bryce Mitchell is one of the dumbest human beings he's ever heard, and that he will not face repercussions because at the end of the day, it is free speech on YouTube. I mean, in the UFC. But Bryce Mitchell is absolutely disgusting and an idiot. And Dana White said he's one of the most dumb people he's ever come across. And he condemned Bryce Mitchell. So did the UFC. Like I said, Ari Emanuel is Jewish. So I believe that Ari Emanuel pressed Dana White about making an immediate statement on this, because the second that Bryce Mitchell's podcast came out, Dana White pretty much dropped a statement at the Power Slap press conference immediately, condemning everything he says. And while Dana White said that Bryce Mitchell will not get any punishment, I don't know if I think so, man. I think the UFC might make an example out of him because, like I said, Ari Emanuel, who is Jewish, although the UFC says free speech, I just don't see a world where they continue to let this guy fight in the UFC. Can you imagine if Bryce Mitchell wins his next fight and he gets on the mic? Can you imagine that? There's no way. So I would not be surprised if you see in the next like 4 to 6 days, Bryce Mitchell cut from the UFC for the comments he made about the Holocaust. I mean, Dana White just, you don't ever see him like come out and say the stuff he did. Typically, Dana White just says, people say what they say, man. What can I do? I'm not going to muzzle anybody. But he came out and right away he condemned everything Bryce Mitchell said, called him an absolute moron. And yeah, Bryce, I think the UFC reached out to Bryce Mitchell about what he said, and Bryce Mitchell pretty much said that he's sorry to put them in a position, but he didn't offer an apology. Yeah, Bryce Mitchell taking Kevin Holland's spot for the fastest way to destroy your entire career in 10 seconds by his very first podcast episode. What an absolute way to start off your podcast, right? Your very first episode. Bryce Mitchell wasted no time, and Dana White also went on to say that Bryce Mitchell's the same guy that twisted his nutsack inside of a drill. So this guy's always been a dumb guy. And sometimes whenever you give dumb guys with platforms, this is the kind of stuff you get. But yeah, absolute insanity. This has been like the big news of the UFC all week. And yeah, I don't know what to say, man. Bryce Mitchell, I don't think anybody's talking about this. I think he's going to get cut from the UFC. I think the UFC is going to make an example out of him and saying, look, we allow the fighters to pretty much say whatever, but this is like on another level. I am pro free speech. I don't think he should be cut from the UFC, but it is what it is. Like, guys say what they say. It is what it is. And whenever he gets his ass kicked in the octagon, that'll be his punishment. We need to book Bryce Mitchell versus Josh Emmett, the second fight. I don't think the first fight was definitive enough, because it seems like Bryce Mitchell, even being sent into convulsions, maybe this is a product of CTE. Who knows? But I 100% think that Bryce Mitchell believes all of this. And if you watch the podcast episode, he drilled this point home. Like, he didn't just say these comments about the Holocaust. He drilled it home over and over again and just kept digging himself in a deeper hole. And his co-hosts were just absolutely embarrassed. But yeah, Dana White condemned it. He said that Bryce Mitchell will not face any what's it called, any repercussions being at the UFC as a free speech policy. But like I said, I could see them making an example out of Bryce Mitchell. But yeah, this news was all over the MMA world yesterday. So I definitely wanted to come on here and talk about it and give my 2 cents on it. But yeah, what do you guys think about it? This is the news in the UFC today across the board. I just wanted to come on here and talk about everything going on, talk about the announced matchups, and just let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys enjoy these kind of news videos? Because I love making them and talking about the current things going on in the UFC. We have the UFC Saudi card tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, and it is only going to be an 11-fight card, so a relatively short card. I'm excited for it. I feel like UFC 312 is a stinker, so you guys better enjoy this Saudi card, because after that, it's going to be back to the Apex. But yeah, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Drop a comment on the video and let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I always appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much on all the support on the channel recently. And yeah, that's it for the video, guys. Peace.